Afternoon. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat. It's a show that is hopefully making the world safe for ADHD. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm in private practice. Most of my practice is, or not most of it, but at least half of it is ADHD. Children, adults, all of that. And I'm also the parent of an ADHD child. And as such, back in the day when I was actively fathering, we didn't know a whole bunch about ADHD. We didn't know, for instance, for sure if it even actually was a thing, if it actually existed. I'm always a little bit, not confused exactly, but a little bit taken aback by people who think it's some kind of a belief system or something. It's like, I don't believe in ADHD. Well, excuse me. It's been documented in medical literature for well over 200 years. It has been treated with medication for at least 100 years. And we have all sorts of medical, psychological, neuropsychological, we have PET scans, we have MRIs, we have CT scans. We have a lot of evidence that suggests that ADHD is a real thing, that people aren't making it up, and that you don't do anybody any favors by denying it exists, nor do you do your children any favors by not getting them treated effectively. Okay? There are a couple of interesting sidelights to that is no matter what you do, you are not going to make your ADHD child, excuse me, a neurotypical child. That is, they are never going to be the quiet, methodical, compliant-based sort of kid that we seem to be wanting to have in our school systems. No, your child is always going to be independent, creative, a little bit stubborn, and a little bit resistant to being just told what to do and expect that they're going to do it that way. So that's probably the downside. The upside is that being treated effectively, I mean, and this is, you have to understand that not everybody with an MD is exactly equal. Not everybody with a PhD is exactly equal. Some folks are better than others at doing certain things. And it's on you as a parent to make sure that you look into your provider's credentials and expertise. You have to, not everybody can be an expert on everything. Your degree gives you a certain entree, as they say, but it doesn't make you an expert on everything. There are some things you do more of, you're more interested in, you get better at. Some things you're not so interested in, probably you'd be better off going to visit somebody else. Treatment is effective, okay? There's no doubt about it that treating a child with ADHD is the best way to go. Let's put it that way. We just recently had one of the companies that was selling a non-pharmaceutical treatment for ADHD abruptly stopped selling in the United States. They stopped selling in the United States because their research is garbage. Their research does not substantiate that they do anything for ADHD. Okay? That's one of the tricky things about being a parent of a child with ADHD. Unless you have some training in research design and statistics and that sort of thing, thank you. Appreciate that. Anyway, unless you do, you will have a hard time evaluating the research, because the little dab you get in the average newspaper story or on the average internet article doesn't really go into the details of research design. And you really have to know some of that stuff, because that's how we, after all, determine what is truth. And it's a scientific method. There's absolutely no problem with it. It is the way things are supposed to be done, the way things usually are done by competent researchers. And the good ones, it doesn't matter who's paying them to do it, they are still going to follow appropriate procedures and come up with and report the appropriate results. Okay? That's the way it's supposed to be. And that's the way, by and large, it is, in spite of our cynicism and that sort of stuff. Oh, the drug industry's just, well, I'm not going to say they don't try, but in general, an ethical researcher is not going to fudge data. We all know it's been done, but in general, a person is not going to risk their entire reputation for a couple of bucks. It's just not worth it, because once you get exposed, you're not going to be able to get your reputation back. That's, just the bottom line. So what I really intended to talk about, I seem to have found an interesting sort of topic that I probably need to spend a little more time on. But it may just be, the fluctuations, the waxing and waning of a normal private practice. But this week, for some reason, I seem to have had a lot of people who had a suspicion that they had ADHD, but never did anything about it. And they figured out ways on their own to sort of make it through school, through an education. They typically did not, if they made it through college, they did not major in, they majored in soft courses or soft majors, I don't want to disparage anybody's degree. I'll just say that some degrees are easier to get than others, and some degrees are more to do with being well coordinated than they have to do with being able to work with information, say. So there are folks out there, and I have been seeing a number of them in the last week, or maybe it's 2 now, of people who were never diagnosed with ADHD, always kind of thought something was different about them, but never really got around to getting an evaluation or anything. Now, I typically see 2 types of folks in that situation. Folks who have done sort of well enough, in the real world, in the adult world, and then folks who were barely making it, and then all of a sudden they got promoted or something, and now they just can't keep up with the job at all. Either one of those 2. I actually kind of salute folks who go through a day-to-day battle not knowing that they've got ADHD and having to put up with just feeling different all the time, feeling like a lot of them feel like they're not as smart as the average neurotypical, if you will. And the sort of disheartening thing about that is ADHD, first of all, it's not an intellectual deficiency, okay? ADHDers in general are pretty bright people. They're clever and creative and all that sort of thing. They just have troubles not paying attention so much, but paying attention to things that they're not really interested in. Okay, I love Bill Dodson's stuff, he writes about interest-based attention systems, and I think that's one of the better ways of looking at ADHD that I have come across, in the idea that ADHDers are great at paying attention to stuff they're interested in. They're just lousy at paying attention to things that they're not interested in. Now, for some of us that sounds, well, obvious, and maybe it's obvious that everybody is kind of a little bit like that, but most of the rest of us in the world who do not have ADHD will do stuff because we're supposed to, or because the boss ordered us to, or because our parents will be proud of us if we do, or our kids will be proud of us if we do, that kind of thing. ADHDs don't necessarily work that way. So I'm always struck when I get an adult who's been struggling with this stuff their whole life and not knowing for sure what's going on, and they hit an article or one of these questionnaires that most of us in psychology make fun of. But if it gets you in the door, getting you started on excuse me, on getting some treatment and getting an explanation for what your problems have been, why not? But they come in, they're a little bit unsure, they're a little bit lacking in some self-esteem, they're not sure what's the matter with them. They may, some of them think, oh, I'm just looking for excuses. Some of them are concerned that, they have somebody close to them, a spouse or friends or something, who say, oh, that's baloney. There's nothing the matter with you. Well, and then, I do a 3 or 4 hour evaluation, and son of a gun, they do have ADHD. And then I do the feedback session. That's when I tell them what we found and, what we recommend and for treatment and all that sort of thing. And they, they react typically in one of 3 ways. Or 3-point play. They react with relief. Oh, thank God, I always knew something was different, but I just never know what, which is not a bad thing. Some of them react with sadness because, all the years I've wasted, if I'd only known, oh God, da-da-da-da-da-da. So all that sadness, depression, regret kind of thing. And then a certain percentage of them are angry. Why the heck didn't anybody, dip-de-dip? Why didn't my parents, or why didn't my teachers, or on and on and on. And those, I never know what exactly I'm going to get when we do this sort of thing. Honestly, most of the time I get more of the, relief, gratitude, thank God, now I know what's going on kind of thing. And we just do our best with what we get, but it's a shame that people go through a significant portion of their lives having a disability that's pretty easily treated, relative to a lot of things, and they've just never been treated, never been diagnosed, never had any kind of therapy. They've just been struggling on their own. And I think that brings out another thing about ADHDers, and that is they're persistent. They don't tend to give up, in general. And not on the big things, not on life as a whole. They tend to give up on stuff they don't like doing, but they tend to keep trying, which is an important survival strength, but it's also unfortunate that frequently it's been more of a struggle than it needed to be. And I salute people who keep trying in spite of things. wish we didn't make it so hard for the ADHD population in particular. And I was just reading a disturbing article that says in school systems, like less than 1 out of 3 kids with ADHD get any sort of accommodations at all. Parents of ADHD children, we've got a job of work to do here, because our school systems are supposed to be. Federal law insists that they provide accommodations. And federal law also insists that if they need it, they need an IEP. Okay. It's federal law, okay? It's not like we're asking for a favor. It's federal law that requires them, if they want to keep getting the federal government's money, that they provide accommodations for ADHD kids. Okay? If that's not clear enough, I don't know how to make it any clearer. If your school is refusing, they are in violation of federal law, and if you make a big enough commotion, that is, you keep going up the chain till you get to the State Board of Education, because I guarantee you, none of those people want to be in violation of federal law. But you keep going till you get what you need. Anyway, that's sort of a rambling kind of thing on a number of different issues, but I salute the folks who have been fighting. I wouldn't say it's the good fight, but they've been doing what they need to do to get by. I salute that, even though you have ADHD. But I highly recommend, if you think that's an issue, get evaluated, get checked out, get so you have appropriate diagnosis and treatment. Because I want to tell you what, if you go into the average general practitioner, you're going to be treated for anxiety and depression typically, okay? I don't know how many tons of people I've seen that actually had ADHD that are being treated poorly, I will say, because medication isn't enough treatment for depression or anxiety. It works on biochemistry. And remember, pills don't teach skills. So if you really are depressed, it takes some training to get out of being depressed. And the same with anxiety. Although personally, I think anxiety is easier to treat than depression, but that's my personal thing. And bottom line is, you guys out there, you're the parents, you're the ones who have to do the heavy lifting in terms of getting your school system to be more compliant. And you also need to be honestly looking at your child. Get a good evaluation. Not a 15-minute discussion about problems, but a definite evaluation that rules in some things, rules out some things, so you know for sure what you got. And then get it treated as appropriately, as it is recommended, okay? I know nobody wants to put their kid on medication forever, but darn, if they need it. I've got a bunch of people in my area, a bunch of lawyers in my area, who have been taking Ritalin since they were in 3rd grade. They're doing great, thank you very much. They can't imagine living without it. Okay, there are a bunch of people out there who are trying to make do with some kind of weed and seed sort of solution. And good luck to you. I mean, try it. But don't expect that it's going to be as effective as appropriate medication. Okay, that's it for me this week. I am Dr. Terry James Gingras. I'm available at terrygingrasphd.com. And if you have any comments or anything, write them, I don't know, is it below or beside or whatever. And we'll catch you next week. Okay, bye now.